Hey everyone, my name is Silas Montgomery, and I need to tell you a story that changed everything between me and my daughter. This is about the day she called me an embarrassment in front of her college friends, and how I let the truth speak louder than any words I could have said. If you believe parents deserve respect no matter how much money they make, stick around. This story might surprise you. It was a cold October morning in Bar Harbor, Maine. I had driven 4 hours from our small town to visit Faith at her Ivy League college. My beat-up Ford truck looked out of place among all the fancy cars in the campus parking lot. I was wearing my cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt. Nothing fancy, but it was what I had. I had been looking forward to this parent weekend for months. Faith was waiting outside her dorm with 3 other students. I recognized them from her social media posts. Rich kids with perfect smiles and designer clothes. Dad. Faith waved, but I could see the worry in her eyes as she looked at my truck. I walked over with a big smile. Hey sweetheart. You look great. Thanks, she said quickly. These are my friends. Evie Carraway, Madison Hayes, and Preston Walsh. I stuck out my hand. Nice to meet you all. I'm Silas, Faith's dad. Evie looked me up and down like I was something she found on her shoe. Oh, so you're the one who works with his hands. The way she said it made it sound like a disease. I do, I said proudly. I fix things that are broken. Preston smirked. How blue collar of you. I felt Faith tense up beside me. I could see she was embarrassed. We all walked toward the campus center together. The other parents were arriving in expensive cars, wearing clothes that cost more than I made in a month. So Mr. Montgomery, Evie said with a fake sweet voice, what exactly do you do for work? I'm a mechanic during the day, I said honestly. And I do some cleaning work at night. The silence that followed felt like ice. Faith's face went red. Dad, maybe we should go get some coffee alone. But Evie wasn't done. Cleaning work? Like a janitor? Nothing wrong with honest work, I replied calmly. Preston laughed. Dude, my dad owns 3 companies. Madison's mom is a surgeon. Evie's father runs the biggest law firm in Boston. And your dad is a janitor? That's when Faith snapped. Look, not everyone can have rich parents, okay, she said loudly. Some of us have to deal with this. She gestured at me like I was something to be ashamed of. Faith, I said softly. Dad, please. You're embarrassing me. These people have standards. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My own daughter. The girl I had worked 3 jobs to support. The girl I had sacrificed everything for. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I nodded. I understand, I said quietly. I'll go now. I walked back to my truck alone. My heart was breaking, but I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. Not in Faith's success or her smart friends, but in what she had become. As I drove home, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight her with words. I wouldn't argue or yell. Sometimes the truth teaches better lessons than any lecture ever could. When I got home, I sat in my small kitchen and looked at the stack of bills on my table. Faith's tuition payment was due in 2 weeks. $43,000 for 1 semester. I had been planning to sell my father's old watch to help cover it. The watch was worth $15,000. It was all I had left of him. But maybe it was time for Faith to learn where her education really came from. I picked up my phone and called the college financial aid office. Hello, this is Silas Montgomery. I need to stop making tuition payments for my daughter Faith Montgomery, effective immediately. Is there a problem, sir? No problem. I just think it's time for her to handle her own finances. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my house. The house I had bought with my savings 15 years ago, back when I thought Faith and I would always be a team. Now she was ashamed of the man who had given her everything. 2 weeks later, Faith called me. Her voice was different. Worried. "Dad? I got a weird letter from the financial aid office. They said my tuition payment was late. I was fixing a car engine at the garage where I worked during the day. My hands were covered in grease." "Oh really?" I said calmly. "Yeah, it's strange. They said the person who usually pays didn't send the money this time." "Huh. That is strange. I thought maybe you could help me figure it out. I mean, I know you don't have that kind of money, but maybe you know who's been helping me." The innocence in her voice almost broke my resolve. She really had no idea. "I'm sure it will work itself out, sweetheart." "But Dad, if I don't pay soon, they might kick me out of school." "Then maybe you should figure out how to pay for it yourself." There was silence on the other end of the line. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're a smart girl, Faith. You'll figure something out." Faith started digging into her finances like a detective. She went to the financial aid office, demanded to see all her records, and made phone call after phone call. What she found confused her even more. She wasn't on any scholarships. She hadn't qualified for need-based financial aid because someone had been paying her full tuition every semester for 3 years. But who? She called her grandparents on her mother's side. They had died when she was 12, and left her a small college fund of about $10,000. That money was long gone. She didn't have any rich relatives. Her mother had died when Faith was young, and she had no other family with money. Meanwhile, I kept working my 3 jobs. During the day, I fixed cars at Murphy's auto shop. In the evenings, I cleaned office buildings downtown. On weekends, I did odd jobs for neighbors. The same routine I had followed for years. The same routine Faith had never bothered to ask about. She came home that weekend, desperate for answers. "Dad, someone has been paying my tuition. Every semester. Every year. Over $100,000. I was making dinner. Spaghetti and store-brand sauce. The same cheap meal I had been eating for years to save money." "That's a lot of money," I agreed. "But who would do that? Who would pay that much for my education?" I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. When had she become so blind to the world around her? "I don't know, Faith. Maybe someone who loves you." Back at school, Faith's situation got worse. Evie Caraway, her wealthy roommate, found out about the tuition problem and decided to make it entertainment. "So Faith," Evie announced to their dorm floor, "I heard you might have to drop out because you can't pay tuition." Faith's face burned with shame. "It's just a temporary mix-up." "Right," Evie laughed. "I mean, it's not like your janitor dad can afford Ivy League prices. What does he make, like $30,000 a year?" Other students gathered around, sensing drama. "Maybe you should transfer to community college," Preston suggested. "More your level." Faith felt trapped. She couldn't defend me because she was still embarrassed by my job. But she also couldn't explain how her tuition had been getting paid. "There's someone helping me," she said weakly. "Like a sugar daddy?" Madison giggled. "No. Like a benefactor." "Sure," Evie smirked. "Some mysterious rich person just decided to pay for the janitor's daughter to go to college. That makes total sense." That night, Faith cried herself to sleep. Not because of the mean comments, but because she realized she had no idea how she had gotten to this expensive school in the first place. Faith's literature professor, Alden Whitmore, noticed her distraction in class. Professor Whitmore was an older man who had grown up poor himself before becoming a scholar. After class one day, he asked Faith to stay behind. "Miss Montgomery, you seem troubled lately." Faith hesitated, then told him about her tuition problems and her confusion about who had been paying. Professor Whitmore listened carefully. Then he told her a story. When I was your age, I was ashamed of my father. He was a coal miner. Came home every day covered in black dust. I used to lie about what he did for work. Faith looked up, interested. It wasn't until after he died that I found out he had worked double shifts for 6 years to save money for my college. He never told me. He just did it. Because that's what parents do. But Professor, my dad is just a mechanic and a janitor. He doesn't make enough money for tuition here. Professor Whitmore smiled sadly. Faith, have you ever actually asked your father about his finances? Or did you just assume? The question hit Faith like a slap. She realized she had never asked me about money, about how we managed to live, about anything important. She had just assumed I was poor and left it at that. That weekend, Faith drove home again. But instead of coming to see me, she went to see Jonas Pike, my best friend who lived next door. Jonas had known me since we were kids. He was the only person who knew the full truth about what I had sacrificed for Faith. Jonas, Faith said, sitting in his kitchen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Jonas, a man of few words, nodded. Do you know how my college tuition has been getting paid? Jonas was quiet for a long time. I had made him promise never to tell Faith about my sacrifices. I wanted her to succeed on her own merit, not feel guilty about what I had given up. But now, seeing Faith so lost and confused, Jonas felt torn. Faith, he said finally, why don't you ask your father? I have. He won't tell me anything useful. Jonas sighed. Maybe because he doesn't want you to feel guilty. Guilty about what? About what he gave up for you. Faith felt her heart start beating faster. What do you mean? Jonas stood up and walked to his window. He could see my house next door, the small house where I lived alone. Your father is a good man, Faith. Maybe too good. Jonas, please. Just tell me what you know. But Jonas shook his head. This is between you and your dad. But I will say this, if you want to know where your tuition money came from, maybe you should pay attention to what your father doesn't have. That night, Faith couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Jonas's words about what I didn't have. She started remembering things. Little things she had never paid attention to before. 3 years ago, when she started college, I owned a nice car. A blue Honda that I had bought brand new. But by winter of her freshman year, I was driving an old Ford truck. I had told her the Honda needed too many repairs, so I traded it in. But now she wondered, had I sold it to pay her tuition? She remembered other changes too. I used to take vacation days from work. We would go camping or visit museums. But after she started college, I never took time off anymore. I used to buy myself new clothes occasionally. But Faith couldn't remember the last time she saw me in anything that wasn't old and worn. She started adding up the changes in her mind, and a sick feeling grew in her stomach. The expensive dinners out, gone. The cable TV subscription, cancelled. The lawn service I used to hire, replaced by me doing all the yard work myself. Everything fun or comfortable in my life had disappeared right around the time she started college. But she had been so focused on her new life, she hadn't noticed what was happening to mine. Faith kept digging through her memories. In my second year of college, more things had changed. I had sold my father's coin collection. I told Faith I was just cleaning out old stuff, but those coins had been precious to me. My father had collected them for 40 years. I also stopped eating out entirely. Even cheap places like McDonald's. Faith remembered coming home and seeing me eat nothing but peanut butter sandwiches and canned soup. When she asked about it, I said I was trying to eat healthier. Now she realized I was probably trying to eat cheaper. I had also taken on the night janitor job during her second year. I told her it was because I was bored in the evenings, but Faith now understood it was because I needed the extra money. Every semester, her tuition went up. And every semester, I found new ways to cut my expenses and work more hours. The basement of our house used to be my workshop, where I fixed things for fun. But during her sophomore year, I had sold all my good tools. Spring cleaning, I had called it. Faith sat in her dorm room, crying as she realized the pattern. Every sacrifice had lined up perfectly with her tuition payments. But the worst part was that she had never even thanked me. She had just assumed someone else was taking care of it. Faith decided she needed proof. She drove back to Bar Harbor and went to the college financial aid office in person. "I need to see exactly who has been paying my tuition," she told the clerk. "I'm sorry, but financial information is private. I'm a student. It's my tuition." The clerk looked at her records. "Well, the payments all come from the same person. Silas Montgomery." Faith's world stopped spinning. That's my father. Yes, he's been making payments every semester. Always on time, always the full amount." Faith stared at the computer screen. Payment after payment. $43,000 every 6 months. For 3 years. Over $250,000. From a man who worked as a mechanic and janitor. "How?" she whispered. The clerk looked confused. "I'm sorry. How does he afford this?" "I don't know, honey. But he's never missed a payment. Even when the tuition went up this year, he covered the increase." Faith walked out of the office in a daze. Her legs felt weak. Her chest felt tight. I had been paying her tuition all along. Not some mysterious benefactor. Not a scholarship. Me. The man she had called an embarrassment in front of her friends. Faith drove straight home, but I wasn't there. It was Tuesday afternoon, which meant I was at my day job at the auto shop. She let herself into the house and went straight to my bedroom. She had never really looked around my room before, but now she saw it with new eyes. The furniture was old and worn. There were no decorations, no nice clothes in the closet. Just work clothes and one old suit for church. She found a box under my bed labeled Faith's College. Inside were all the receipts. Tuition payments. Books. Dorm fees. Meal plans. Everything. But there were other papers too. Loan applications that had been denied. Letters from the bank about selling assets. Records of overtime hours worked. At the bottom of the box was a letter I had written but never sent. It was dated 3 years ago, right before her freshman year. "Dear Faith," it began, "tomorrow you start college. I am so proud of you. I want you to know that paying for your education is not a burden for me, it is an honor. You deserve every opportunity in the world, and if I have to work 3 jobs for the rest of my life to give them to you, I will do it gladly. I love you more than you will ever know. Dad." Faith collapsed on my bed, sobbing. The letter was stained with her tears, but she couldn't stop crying. All this time, I had been working myself to death to give her the life she wanted. And what had she given me in return? Shame. Embarrassment. The feeling that I wasn't good enough to be her father. When I came home that evening, covered in grease from the garage, Faith was waiting in the kitchen. Her eyes were red from crying. "Dad, we need to talk." I looked at her, surprised. She hadn't wanted to talk to me in months. "Sure, sweetheart. Let me just wash up." "No, Dad. Sit down. Please." I sat across from her at our small kitchen table. The same table where we used to do her homework when she was little. "I know," she said simply. "Know what?" "I know you've been paying my tuition. All of it. Every semester. I was quiet for a moment. Then I nodded. I know you sold your car, Grandpa's coins, and your tools. I know you work 3 jobs. I know you never buy yourself anything anymore. My voice was soft when I spoke. Faith, you don't need to worry about. Yes, I do, she interrupted. Dad, I called you an embarrassment. In front of everyone. And the whole time, you were the one making my entire life possible. I reached across the table and took her hand. Honey, you're not embarrassing me. You're at an Ivy League school. You're getting an incredible education. You're going to do amazing things with your life. But what about your life, Dad? What about your dreams? I smiled. You are my dream, Faith. You always have been. Faith spent the next hour asking me questions she should have asked years ago. How much money did I make? About $50,000 a year from all 3 jobs combined. How did I afford her tuition? I had saved money since she was born, sold everything valuable I owned, and worked overtime whenever possible. What did I want for myself? Just to see her succeed and be happy. Dad, Faith said finally, I have been the worst daughter in the world. No, you haven't. Yes, I have. I was so busy trying to fit in with rich kids that I forgot where I came from. I forgot who raised me. I stood up and hugged her tight. Faith, I didn't sacrifice for you so you could feel guilty. I did it because I love you. But I need to make this right. You don't need to do anything right. Yes, I do, Dad. Tomorrow, I'm going back to school. And I'm going to tell everyone exactly who you are and exactly what you've done for me. I started to protest, but Faith held up her hand. Dad, you taught me to be proud of honest work. You taught me that family comes first. You taught me that love means sacrifice. But somewhere along the way, I forgot those lessons. She wiped her eyes. It's time I remembered. The next day, Faith stood up in her American literature class. Professor Whitmore was discussing a poem about family loyalty. Professor Whitmore, Faith interrupted, can I say something? The professor nodded, sensing something important was about to happen. Faith looked around the room. Evie Carraway was there, smirking as usual. Preston Walsh was checking his phone. Madison Hayes was painting her nails. I want to tell you all about my father, Faith began. The room got quiet. His name is Silas Montgomery. He's 56 years old. He works 3 jobs, as a mechanic during the day, a janitor at night, and doing odd jobs on weekends. Evie rolled her eyes. Faith, we already know your dad is. My dad, Faith continued loudly, has paid every single cent of my tuition at this school. Not loans. Not scholarships. Him. Working 3 jobs, selling everything he owns, never buying himself anything nice. The room was completely silent now. For 3 years, he has worked 70 hours a week so I could sit in this classroom. He sold his car, his father's coin collection, and his tools. He eats peanut butter sandwiches. Faith looked directly at Evie Carraway. You want to know what embarrassing is? Embarrassing is not appreciating the person who sacrificed everything for you. Embarrassing is caring more about what rich kids think than about the man who made your dreams possible. She turned to address the whole class. My father is not an embarrassment. He is the strongest, most loving man I know. And if you think less of me because my dad works with his hands instead of sitting in an office, then you're not the kind of person I want to know anyway. Professor Whitmore started clapping. Soon, other students joined in. Evie Carraway looked uncomfortable for the first time since Faith had known her. After class, Faith called me. Dad, I did it. I told everyone the truth. How do you feel? Proud. Proud of you, and proud to be your daughter. That weekend, Faith brought 3 of her friends home with her. Not Evie or her crowd, but 3 students who had approached her after her speech. Students who understood what family sacrifice meant. We had dinner together, spaghetti and store-brand sauce. And for the first time in years, Faith seemed happy to be home. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't shouting or punishing, it's letting the truth reveal itself. My daughter thought I embarrassed her, until she found out the only reason she wore Ivy League colors was because I carried her dreams on my back. And that was the day she stopped seeing shame in me, and started seeing love. Faith graduated with honors 2 years later. She works as a teacher now, helping kids who come from families like ours. She tells them to be proud of parents who work hard, no matter what job they do. Every month, she tries to pay me back for college. And every month, I put that money in a savings account for her future children. Because that's what parents do. We don't sacrifice for recognition. We sacrifice because love doesn't count the cost. If you believe parents deserve respect, hit that subscribe button, because more stories like this need to be heard. And remember, the hands that build your dreams might be rough with work, but they're always gentle with love.